Hey YouTube, I know it's been a while since I've recorded a video and just been busier than all get out lately. Probably about the past 6 months. I had originally intended on doing videos once a week, once every couple weeks, whatever. And you know how it goes, life just kind of gets in the way. For those of you that may or may not know, I do have a regular 40-hour-a-week job. It's never 40. I'm an auto appraiser of sorts for an insurance carrier, and it's been busy to say the least. But on top of that, we had the hurricane, which took me out of commission for a month directly, and then a little bit afterwards, just trying to recover from 14, 15-hour days, driving from the Tampa area down to Hurricane Ian and helping those folks out with some vehicle repairs and a lot of totals. But anyway, that's been a mess. Totally off topic for what we do here. No, we haven't made a video in a long time, but wanted to get back to it eventually. Well, I guess eventually is here now. So anyway, I'll give you a small little update of the shop, and I got a project that I'm working on that I thought you guys might take some interest in. Might be a hint or two about a couple other projects too, for future videos, hopefully, time permitting. So I can't say my editing skills have gotten any better. Talked in the last videos about trying to get some more knowledge in editing software and stuff like that. Well, that hasn't happened either. So if you don't make the content, you don't have anything to edit. If you don't edit, you don't post. So this one here is not going to be the edited format. It's just going to be kind of live, shoot from the hip kind of thing. So anyway, first and foremost, it'll be random. We're kind of bounce around here, but first and foremost, you'll see this schmuck. So I had my dog got a little bit of issue with some kidney stones or bladder stones, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, supposedly they're affected by calcium amounts. I don't know. Whatever. But she had to be on this special diet, and that's what this this bag's from. Is actually her dog food, but it's not canvas. It's a real slick plasticky material, but it's really thick. So my mom is into sewing and all this, and she makes these bibs or whatever you call them out of big bird seed bags, you know, the bulk 50 pounders or 40 pounders or whatever they are, bird seed bags. And they're more like a burlap, but they're a plastic type of burlap. And so they're real good for the ladies that, you know, cook and all that, because stuff just wipes and falls right off. So I said, hey, could you make me one, but make it out of this bag? Of course, you got to have something to put it on, in my case, because I wanted it longer. It probably could be brought up a little bit too. But anyway, so she went down and bought the vinyl. And this is a pretty good thick vinyl. It's held up pretty good. But this turned out really nice. Got a strap in the back to get around my fat gut here. But it turned out really nice. And let me tell you, for working with that glue that I talked about before, or any liquid finishes that you're putting on, the stuff just wipes right off. For the most part, it would get a little sticky on the vinyl, but on this other stuff here, this kind of almost like a trash bag, but thick. It just wipes right off. It falls right off, and of course the dust just falls right off. So this has worked out great. It's been a great addition. Since then, I've been able to get the dog off of this special diet food, which is expensive as hell. So she's back off of it, so I don't have any more bags. Otherwise, I'd probably make some of these my own, or have my mom make up some of them too. She's retired. She got time on her hands. But anyway, so take you for a little trip around the shop here. So bear with me. Doing this on the phone again. The GoPro is not being friendly. So anyway, you guys have seen a lot of this before. So just move some stuff around in a 2-car garage. For those of you that don't know. So I'm in a neighborhood in a 2-car garage. Used to have a 4-car garage out in the country. I could do whatever I want, make whatever kind of noise I wanted. But here, I got to be a little bit more sensitive to the neighbors. They return the favor for the most part. So one of the things that I did in here since the last time that you guys saw a video or any sort of a walk around about this garage is that this garage door, of course, this is a fast-built home development kind of thing, track build if you were in Arizona, but they put some good stuff in. It's a Wi-Fi home or a smart home, so a lot of technology in the home, but they do chintz out in certain areas like the garage door. And I'm outside of Tampa. That garage door, the front of the house, faces to the west. So after about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, that door bakes. And let me tell you, the temperature in here was unbearable. Another kind of part of the reason or an excuse for not making videos is I just couldn't be in here in the summer. So this double garage door got terrible. So I did go out and bought an insulation kit. Well, actually 2 of them because they're 9-foot kits. But anyway, this is just a styrofoam with like a plasticky melamine type of finish on it. And they come in 4-foot sheets, so you got to cut them down and put them in. Pretty easy project. Just had to take these rails off kind of one by one or whatever, and you kind of bow them. They're saw cut on the back, almost like a piano hinge kind of thing. But they're saw cut on the back, so you just bend them and they fit in. And they fit pretty good. I only had one that came out a little wonky in the cuts. But I figured that out, and you can't see it. I can't even tell you where it's at now. But this stuff worked out really nice. Brightened it up in here, too, because the back of that door is aluminum, so it's gray. And this white did a good job reflecting. Still need to get some more lights in this area, but talking about lights, another addition that I made to the shop and moved some stuff around. I can't remember if I did in the last video or not, but these lights here, pardon the halo, or the brightness of that lamp. But anyway, these lamps here, probably seen them before. They're kind of old school. Sometimes you might see these attached to like magnifying glass things for people that work on electronics or small stuff. But anyway, these lamps here are IKEA. They're like 10 bucks a piece, I want to say. And they've got an LED bulb that comes with them, so they last forever. I've never replaced a bulb. And they're very, very flexible, and they've got, some tensioning that you can put on them and hold them up in place wherever you want. And so I do have 2 of those. I actually have a 3rd one on my desk in the house. So those have worked out great in getting some extra lights into the remote part of the garage where I don't have enough mounted to the ceiling yet. And being part of a smart home, every light in the house is LED. So anything that's not LED is something that I put in. What else? So LEDs would be easy to add in here. I don't need an extra circuit. I could just drop 2 4-footers above the garage and it'd be just fine. I just haven't done it. So I think the shelving it was in, some things have moved around a little bit with the shelving. It is just 2x4 framing. And so I hate these shelves on their own to be stacked up. You'll see these all the time at Home Depot. Craftsman has a line of them. They're just red on the end. Same damn thing. They're plasticky support tubes and they're plastic shelves. And they have no support. Like, I suppose you could use them in a craft room where you got fabric, but that's about it. So I took them apart and put them up here on this framing. I could put regular plywood on the bottom of this, but I had the shelves. They worked. And they fit the spot pretty good overall. So I put those in, and then I also added, it's kind of a little bit hard to see here. Turn that light around. So in the middle there, right up here, here. So I had some scrap 2x6s, so I just cut those down, painted them black, and put them in the middle to try and help support that top shelf. I don't have a ton of weight up there, so they weren't bowing terribly, but you get a couple 5-gallon buckets or cooler stuff that's heavier up there and they will bow. But they don't now with this 2x4 and 2x6 framing that I put up. They don't bow. Then I also had, I think these were in the last one, but I've had some black and yellow bins. I really like these. I like to get more of them. They're really heavy duty. They work great. They're stackable. They keep everything very organized. The key though is you gotta label them, because if not, you'll forget what's in them. I got one up there that's not labeled, and I don't know if there's anything in it. So anyway, move this toolbox over here. This toolbox has a shelf built, some 2x4s bolted to the back of it, and then the shelf put up here. Got a little Bluetooth radio, less than $100 on Amazon. I think this is a new addition. I don't think this was here. It did come with the remote. It is Bluetooth, or you can plug in direct to USB. So it works real good with the phone if you got iHeart, Pandora, music saved, whatever on your phone. Works out great. And then I found some Infinity little bookshelf speakers. I think they're more or less surround sound speakers. I don't know, but they were less than $20 at Goodwill. I don't go in there often, but every now and then I'll find something, and I did. So for $20, and they work great. The sound in here is plenty. Not loud enough to make a disturbance, but still loud enough to turn them up and be able to hear over, equipment that's running. So move the lathe around a little bit. That was on this other shelf over here before. Move the lathe around, and a small addition to that is it's not going to stay this way, but did make a little sanding disc for it. Works out pretty good for trying to square some things up. Bandsaw is still the same. Toolbox for doing, my turning stuff. Turning tools are in there. Wood turning. And then on the bottom, while it's a mess right now, I did stack out some walnut log that I cut. And it's been there drying. It's plenty dry now. It's stabilized. Not acrylic stabilized, just it's stable for the environment. The moisture is what it is. This still needs a ton of work. This is not the way I want it. It's, there's so much in here, you can spend a ton of time. I love creating ideas for storage and organization, though it might not look like it. But that takes time. And then the time that you take doing that takes you away from the projects. Well, I love doing the projects too. So, and with the past 5-6 months being the way that it has, it's not terrible, but there's always room for improvement, always way to do something a little bit different and make things better, more put away, keeps less dust. The more organized you are, the less dust accumulates in the cracks and crannies around. So I do still have some wood on the bottom to cut up. I have some bottle brush logs, some cherry, some oak. We got crepe myrtle hanging out over there. I got a project for those. So that's the update on the shop. Oh, there's a new workbench over there. That's my son's for more or less his motorcycle stuff. So just move, before we used to have the toolboxes and the shelving unit down here in the middle, so it kind of created a walkway. But we found that moving it back just gave you a little bit more elbow room for projects. And normally these bikes and the motorcycle are over here, so still plenty of room to walk in and out of the house. Just gave you some more room. If you got a 4x8 sheet or something, can get a little tight in here. So that's it with the shop updates. Really haven't made any equipment purchases. I did get a handheld router. I'll hang on, I'll grab it. So this is just a little Ryobi. In fact, this one is actually reconditioned. It was a gift. I've got plenty of reconditioned stuff from them. There's a store here in Tampa. Well, they've got locations in Georgia too, probably elsewhere. But Direct Tool, they kind of specialize in Ryobi refurbished stuff, and I bought several things from them. Handheld drills, that handheld router, handheld drill. Yeah, go figure, right? I've got a corded angle grinder from them. A couple other things along the way. I usually sell them either bare tool or with the battery and chargers. I kind of always opt for the battery and chargers because you can't buy the battery and the charger for what it is, the markup that they give you on the tool with it. So whatever. They're usually 1 hour and they don't last long, and stuff like this, but hey, they come with it. It's cheap enough. So anyway, that's been a really cool addition. And the reason that I showed this to you is that part of the project that I was going to show you guys today will, I don't know that I'll show you me actually using it because I've already kind of proceeded a little forward in the project. But anyway, you get an idea. of what I would have used this for, and I'll show you some of the bits that come into play. So this is a pretty decent, I would say, starter set. I can't remember the brand on it. It doesn't say on here, but it did come in a box, a plywood box, with a Lexan, whatever, plexiglass thing on the front of it, so you can see if your bits are in there, and then also it's drilled for hanging on the wall in the back. But these are really nice bits, pretty expensive. As you know, probably know, router bits get ridiculous. But there's 5 of them here in the set, and I think this whole thing was 75 or 80 bucks at Ace. So there's probably cheaper places to get it, but I needed them, and I didn't have time to wait, so I got them. So there's a couple of bits in here that have some bearings on them, and I'll show you what that's used for. So one of them is a just kind of a clear cutting bit. Well, there's a couple of them here. So these are more or less flattening, or if you're going into a pocket, and I'll show you that here too. So on to the project. So if you go out to the Instagram, Tailored Turnings, you'll see something on there that's already done, and it's very, very close, very similar to what I got here. The design is a hair different, but you probably won't pick up on it necessarily. So this particular, the one that's already out there, it's, I'll tell you, is black and red, gray and red. It's a clock, so you'll see it out there. It's already done. Check it out. You know, comment on it. Follow Tailored Turnings on Instagram would be great and wonderful. If you follow this channel, would be great and wonderful too. So I really appreciate the support. This one here is going to be just a little bit different. So this one here is kind of a mix of not just old, not just new, I should say. Like before, it was just new stuff. This one here is a little bit of a mix between a couple of parts that are new and one part in particular, well, 2, I guess, that are old. So the first of which, I should have brought that other clock out here so you could see what it finished like. So this is a rear sprocket. It's from a Honda CRF 450R. So this is an old one. This was salvaged. Sunstar, Japan, I don't know. Doesn't really matter what they are. You can make it from anything that you want. It doesn't have to be a CRF 450. It could be a 250, 110, whatever you want. Just give you some idea by holding up here how, you know, how big it is, or how little, I guess. Hold it down. Anyway, so this one here is about a 10-inch, maybe a little bit larger than that. And this is the rear sprocket. And so there'll also be a front sprocket, but then the clock will go here in the middle. And the one that I made before, and you can kind of design these however you want. You got to put a backer material behind, and I'll show you that. But in my case, I really liked how it turned out by using the outer and then taking an inner. Now this is new. This is just an inner that I bought for the same bike actually, but I liked the holes that were in it. Not necessarily for mounting, but I just liked how the contrast would be with the holes. Some of these are solid in the middle. And so just pick one out that you like. I mean, don't break the bank. Say this one's salvage, just came off of a bike that we did probably about a year ago. We replaced the sprockets on it, and I didn't have the small sprocket anymore, but bought a new small front sprocket. This stuff can get expensive if you're not careful, or I wanted to make sure it was all from that bike for some other reasons. The bike you saw in here in the garage real quick was a CRF 450R. It's my son's race bike. We just got rid of a second bike, but it was the same thing. And so I wanted, when I made the last project, I wanted it to be for him. It was a present. I wanted it to be for that bike. So it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what they come from, but the idea here is that this will kind of sit in the middle of it. So, well, how do you get it in the middle of it? So this is not finished yet, so I'll preface it before the comments come out. So I had an old project that somebody else did, but they had a tabletop, or maybe it was the end from an old desk, and it was an oak desk. It had veneer over it on the end, and they're about 3/4 of an inch thick, and so it would have been great material for the pens or the seam rippers, some other stuff that I do that takes that size of material for turning on a lathe, so that would have been great for that. But then I thought, well, you know, it's oak, so it's strong. It'd be good backer material for this project. I've always kind of liked doing clocks. I haven't done a lot of them. I had a family member that was into it back when I was really little. His were not this style. They were more wood, but I like the idea of them. It's kind of a cool project, but yet I don't make the clock body. Those I purchase, there's plenty of sites to get them from. It's just a little square clock body. I mean, you could either go on Amazon or buy them. You can go, there's several specialty companies out there in the US and abroad that you can order them from. They're already set to go. They work relatively well. I've had a couple of issues along the way, but I've worked them out. It's just a square body clock. You can find them in anything. Even if you went to Hobby Lobby or Home Goods, whatever, and you found a clock in there that had a broken face on it, walk up to the counter and tell them, hey, you know, I'll give you $5-10 for this thing, and then you got your clock, because the clock is probably still working. It's just got a broken face, and they're not going to be able to sell that to anybody. So, you know, you can find stuff like that too if you're strategic, and I love doing that. I love walking into either Goodwill or you know, Home Goods and finding some material that I really could work with that you know, would otherwise be salvaged, or, you know, I don't know. You see where I'm going with that. So anyway, that's what this is. This is the oak, this end panel on the desk. It was oak. I stripped the veneer off the top of it. Just did that with an iron and a wet t-shirt. Put the iron on full steam. Set the wet t-shirt down over the veneer and leave it there for a minute or so. Maybe a little bit longer. But anyway, leave it there, and the veneer most likely will peel right off. You may not even need a putty knife. But if you do, little putty knife, it'll clean right up. So I'm still working on trying to perfect this. Oak is not, your tool's got to be really sharp in order to not get some splintering around the edges. This doesn't matter so much because this piece is actually going to go behind the gear. So what I did is I set the gear down on top of the oak, and then I just traced it out. And I thought, well, the last one I did that way, and then I just sanded it back, because you actually won't be able to see except the center of the oak, but you can't see the sprocket portions, if you will, that I cut into the oak. And you couldn't on the last one either, but the last one I did freehand with the bandsaw, and then I just sanded it back. But since I bought this router and I bought the router bits, the ones with the bearings on it, what I actually did is I flipped that idea and I set this oak on top of the gear. So I set it down on the table like this. Of course, imagine this oak was one big slab, square. And I had just marked out in the middle of these cogs where a hole would be in the center of that and drilled it. And so I took and bolted this piece down to the gear and bolted it down. Doesn't really matter. They didn't have to be countersunk at the time. It was just to hold it in place. And then I put that router bit inside of the hole, the center hole that I had drilled in here, and it's got a bearing on it. So that bearing just set the depth to where it ran up against the metal part here of the sprocket, and yet the cutter part was in the oak. Yes, cutter part was in the oak, and then it just cuts it out, but the bearing runs around the perimeter of that sprocket, and so it gives you, it's a flush cut, and so it does give you the perfect cut. If this were bolted down, you would see, you really can't see the sprockets of that oak through the sprocket material. So it's just there as a backer, and the bolt holes end up becoming, works out kind of good in this case. So these bolt holes, these bolts are too long, but they're basically the same thing. So they're a tapered kind of a specialty cone type tapered bolt, and these ones are too long, but they go through there. And so if I set it just like this, we've got the 12 o'clock hour, and based upon how many of them there are around here, you're going to see you're going to have 2, 4, 6, down at the bottom, 8, 10. Pretty easy to tell if you got hands on here like a clock where that's going. So, or what time it is, you know, pretty easy to see it. The real key in designing this is, well, a couple of keys. So it's important to me that you don't carry the design of this wooden sprocket all the way out to this edge behind. So and I did this initially. So when I carved this initially with the router, I just made it so it was fully round, and the only exposed portions were in each one of these holes here. It's great, it's fine, but then I got to looking at my other design, which did not have this outer perimeter, whatever. The oak was not there on the outer part, so it was just truly a cog, like this one is now. You can see there's not an outer ring on this. And the reason being is when you put this thing on the wall, if that were filled in back here, behind it, if that were filled in around here and hanging on the wall, you can imagine you're not going to get any light in these openings here because it's going to be blocked on the back. So there's no light that'll show through. So your wall color, which in my case I have basically white walls, off-white walls, you wouldn't see that. So you lose a lot of the detail because this is then just going to turn into a black, a black hole. Especially because what I do with the oak, and this wasn't, I didn't have any reason to use the oak other than I had it. It wasn't for the strength or anything, but as you'll see on the other one, if you go out and look at it, I actually paint this oak black. So what I really want is the detail of the sprockets to stand out, and then also the hands. Here towards the end, maybe I'll just go grab that one real quick so you guys can see it. But anyway, so then to go along with that, on the back side here, so these are all the holes from the holes that went around the sprocket. So this would be wall side, if you will. I guess this would be the up and down orientation. So what I really have intended to do, and I haven't done it yet because that router is new, I've only used it on 2 projects, is I really need to make a template for the square to match the clock insert that goes in this. But I haven't. So I did this freehand. I actually used a couple of straight edges to try and get it as clean as possible. But I'd like to make a template to where the outside ring of that router just rides around the template and makes this square a uniform size every time, and that it would be nice and true in a square. This one is close, but it's on the back. So it's not a big deal, but I would like it to make it square. So sounds corny, but if you don't care about the quality that's not seen, isn't the quality that is seen a little subjective? It's not going to be perfect. It is wood versus metal. I'm not putting it on a lathe. I'm not putting it on a Bridgeport, to carve this stuff. This is freehand to some extent. And this part here is just the mounting block. You're not really going to see it except for the center face, and even that to some extent is going to be blocked off. That's the most that you'd see, but then what actually happens is this gear also, I actually epoxy this down in the middle. So there's really not much of the oak that you see, and what you do see will be painted black. So the stuff, you can't see any of these holes, right? You can't see any of the holes that are drilled. The center one would be covered up by the clock itself. You can't see any of the drilled holes in the oak. So a little bit of splintering around those holes is not a big deal. It is going to be mounted behind the metal sprocket itself. So, if I bring this up here, you'll see that these are not perfect, and it's oak, so they do get rough. You can try and sand these away, but that sprocket's going to be up here, and there's no reason for it to ever be off, you know, taken apart. There's just no reason for that. So spend your time where it makes sense to some extent. Now, this is not finished, so I have routed it. You know, I told you I took that outer ring off that would have gone kind of around these. So I did that, but I rough cut it, and I have not finished this up. That's what that disc sander on the lathe, I'm going to use that for. You can kind of see there's some shadow lines there where this has got to be rounded off. So this is definitely not finished by any means. I always talk about the mistakes, you know, kind of poke fun at myself here too. So I'm forever learning. This is not something I'm perfect at. You can see my equipment is not new. I'm not a professional carpenter or woodworker. You know, I'm a hobbyist, slack at best. I just thought maybe some of you guys would like some of the projects that I work on, but you know, maybe some of the stuff that I learn along the way and tell you about, maybe you guys will learn it as well and avoid making the mistakes. Though kind of like for people to make mistakes too, because I always say you learn way more from the mistakes than you do from any of your successes. So, but anyway, one of the things that I would say to do is, in the case of these holes here, these are recessed with a Forstner bit. And I do that so that the bolt, or the nut rather, that goes on the mounting bolt, I'm actually able to get a tool in there, you know, to tighten the nut down, but then also that's not sticking out, because remember, this is going to be wall side. So you can't have anything sticking out in the back here, including that clock body, which is why that's routed in there. And this is plenty thick. I mean, the material inside of this clock area here is probably a good 1/8 of an inch thick anyway. And it's plenty firm, especially with oak. It's plenty firm. It's just holding the little plastic clock body. There's not really a whole lot of weight going on there. Though this thing does weigh a little bit when you get it all assembled, because that sprocket's not terribly light. So if you were to put this on a wall, you could use an anchor. Most of those anchors are rated heavy enough, but I'm an overdo it kind of guy. I don't like putting stuff hanging on drywall. So I did go into a stud. Probably not 100% necessary. It's not that heavy, but anyway. So I thought if I can remove a little bit of extra weight by having this block, you know, routed in and bigger than the actual body that goes in there, all the better. So, and this will get sanded down, as I said again. And this really is, like I say, is not going to be seen. It's going to be painted black, so it's not really going to be visible. So, again, I'll just kind of set this over here to the side so you can get kind of a rough idea of how it would look. So this is kind of how it would look. You'd have these bolts in here that run all the way down. I just bought ones that are too long. And then the gear in the center. Now the wood block in the back gets painted black. And you can always choose your color. That's what's great about doing projects like this, is you can choose your colors. You know, for me, the last one worked out good to be black and red. My son's bike is black, but it's a Honda, and it's got red shocks. So I thought the black and red really was a good play. Of course, that's an old standby for gearheads, you know, motorheads, whatever, race cars. Black and red is a pretty recognizable in the automotive world. Probably the only thing more recognizable is that black and Harley orange. So, and we don't ride Harleys. I like them, but don't have any. So in this one, another combination of new and old. So that's an old sprocket. The new one's, or the center one's new, but we bought this chain and it's too short for anything that we intended for it to go on. And it's a cheapy chain. There's nothing that we're ever going to use this chain for, and these things come with so much grease on them. It's a cheapy chain. It's nothing special, but it's way too short for any of the bikes that we ride. And this one's going to be cold. So I've got some decisions to make, you know, and that, to give you an idea on that chain's going to ride around the outside of this. So That chain will go all around the outside of this, as you can kind of see there. And I'll show you again on the other one. If I had thoughts about doing it on the center one, the problem is when you're using the chain, this chain is divisible by 2. So the cogs on the outside of this particular sprocket, and if you want to make something similar and you want to put a chain around the outside, which I do, you got to make sure that there's an even number of teeth. Well, that's not the case with the inner sprocket on this or the other one that I've already completed. So that's not really a possibility for the inner, because you have to have a link, and the link's covered too. So even number of sprockets or teeth around the sprocket. So that one will end up being gold. And for the clock bodies, so these are fairly inexpensive. The last set that I bought, I purchased, I think it was a set of 4, and they were somewhere around 20 bucks, I want to say. And they come with hands, and you can pick out your color of your hands, though I did change the colors. Mine came with black hands and a red second hand, sweep hand. You can buy them with a second hand. You can buy them without a second hand, you know, for the clock mechanism itself. And then you can pick, you know, there's just thousands of them out there, you know, and especially on jungle.com, whatever. There's just tons of them out there, so you can go out there and look and see what you got and pick out your hands. And you also have to pick out the length of your arm, you know, your hand, your hour hand and your minute hand. So you got to be careful with the length. And I'll show you a glimpse of a project that's coming up where this particular clock body set that I bought is not going to work with it. The project will be fine, but I'm going to have to order up some different, probably not different mechanisms necessarily, but some shorter hands. It's a smaller designed clock. So with that being said, I think I'm going to take a break right here for just a second. And I'm going to go and grab that other clock. And I'll show you kind of what the finished project looked like there. Be right back, guys. Well, hopefully I can figure out how to edit that little break out of there. So if not, and I get lazy, maybe I won't. I think you'd be all right. So anyway, this is kind of the finished project. As I showed you on the other one, the chain's going to be gold. I will probably do something different on the other one with the bolts that go through, like color-wise. This one works out okay because the area that I have it in is fairly bright. I want to drop this. It's pretty bright, and so those show up okay, you know, to where you can read it from afar. As I said, these hands were actually black before. Well, that didn't work out at all with the darkness of the sprocket. I painted that kind of a matte gray, both of them. And then the hands were black with the black backing, and you really couldn't see it in black. You know, I call them the hour markers here. But that it was just too much black. I mean, it looked great in person, but to actually see it, holy crap, this is weird looking at it this way. The second hand's going backwards. But I don't know why that, get a kick out of that. But anyway, so I changed these over to silver hands. I just did this with some Testors plastic model paint that I had laying around, little tiny little vials of it. I don't know. They probably charge an arm and leg anymore for paint, but I've had them forever. And it was silver and I had it. So that's what I used. And it works out great. If I had to do this exact one again, I would probably change, you know, make the color of these either silver or red. Red would look good, but it'd be hard to get a perfect match. The second hand doesn't perfectly match the chain. It's obviously not from the same place. And again, this is cheapy chain. I mean, it is double O-ring chain. but I think the chain, now this one is all new. So I'll preface that or tell you that the sprocket, the rear sprocket, the front sprocket, and the chain are all new. So these were eBay specials. It's not expensive chain by any means. I probably wouldn't run it on a race bike. I just bought it specifically for this project. But I think this entire kit was probably $40. So that's not expensive at all. You can spend double or triple that just on a rear sprocket, depending on what you get. So the other one, the project that I'm showing you here, the new project rather, is a Pro Taper sprocket. So for any of you that are into dirt bikes, for any of you that are into dirt bikes, Pro Taper is a pretty well-known name. It's good stuff. You're going to find it on a lot of bikes, but for this, who cares? I mean, it could be, for project-wise, for what we're doing here, I wanted it to be a particular size. 10 or 12 inch kind of works out to be a good size for a wall clock. But obviously, that thing would be ginormous on a desk. So, it works out good, and that size sprocket works out good for this particular project. But you can make this, guys. You can make this any way you want. In fact, this is not how I originally planned it. I originally planned to set this up and cut some wood, because I had plenty of it, and kind of set it up such as this, with the position the way they would be on a bike. And then the wood support that I was going to make was going to go around the center still, around these holes, just like that one, except for it was going to have an arm that came out to the front sprocket. Well, that's how they look on the bike, That's the setup. If you look on the bike here, your swing arm, so you got your rear sprocket here, and then you got your swing arm, and you got your front sprocket. Now, I wouldn't have made it like 3 foot across, but I still like the general idea. But then I got to thinking about it and some suggestions from the better half. And she said, hey, why don't you put it in the middle? And I said, that's a pretty good idea. So that's the way it worked out. And I'll bring this back up for the shameless plug. So, I think in general this worked out pretty good. This fluorescent light's playing a number on it, but it worked out pretty good. It's pretty visible. Right now I can tell that it's, that's what, 145? I'm looking at this backwards. Yeah. Again, this reverse is throwing me off, but, I can tell what time it is from afar. It works out pretty good to have a 2 increment on the hour marks. You can easily see if it's in between and tell what time it is, So anyway, this was just another one idea. It's a crazy thing that came into my head. And I said, boy, that would kind of be cool, for 50, 60, 70 bucks, by the time you bought everything, if you had to buy the wood separate, which I didn't, it works out pretty doggone good for that kind of money. And, it's neat. And it takes, this is a regular, I'll show you on the back. So this is just the regular mechanism. It's just a regular standard, these mechanisms are like $5 to $8 a piece, I think, maybe 10. I can't remember. They were in a pack, multi-pack, and a AA battery, and this thing will run forever. I've got a clock in the house with this same setup, store-bought clock, and the same setup, and the battery has been in there for 2 years, at least, without running down. It's still spinning. So, it's a neat little project. As I said, it is a little on the heavy side. But, so that's a cool one. We'll continue working on. I'll probably make another video as this goes on, although I've kind of given it away. You've seen the end product, but this one will be a little bit different just because of the coloring. So, some sneak peeks. So that wraps up the clock, the big wall clock project. So some sneak peeks, or maybe some I probably won't make a video on this first one. So, this is lathe work that I'll be getting at here, but so my mom makes these, you know, she's retired and she's constantly a busybody. I think I shared that in another video. She doesn't sit still well, and you know, projects, lengths of time, man. It's lengths of time with her. So anyway, she does some pretty cool projects, let me tell you. Definitely skilled. Runs in the family. My uncle carves ducks and geese and swan, and I tell you, he dwarfs my talent. My mom's stuff that she does a lot of sewing and crafting, and she makes these, it's hard to explain, but these Christmas trees, right, that are pretty ornate. They're out of wood and others. Anyway, she's very crafty, very project oriented, and creative. And so she makes these yarn type pot holders almost. So they're circular in shape, and you would set your, you know, your glass cooking, not sheet, but cooking pan, whatever, if you were going to somebody's house, you know. You buy these store-bought things with the zipper around them. You put your casserole dish. That's the word I'm looking for. So you put your casserole dish inside of this. Well, she makes these, but she makes them out of yarn. So they're really cool, and they're intricate and cool colors and all that. But she's like, I could really use some handles. And so she gave me some old plastic yarn, you know, the leftovers from what the yarn is wrapped up from sewing. And she said, could you make me some wood ones? So yeah, I started turning out some wood ones here. So again, this is lathe work, you know, it is simple. It doesn't really matter what wood it is because she's going to paint them or stain them, I guess. But just drill a hole in the end of it. And, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. They're not sitting next to each other. They're on, you know, each side of this holder. And one up on the top. Maybe, I can't remember. But, you know, that was one idea. There's a couple of other patterns that she's asked me to make for her. So these don't take very long and allows me to use up some roadside upcycling type of things. So I might have shown this in a video, but I stopped by, I was in another city and I stopped by the side of the road. This guy had taken out some crepe myrtle out of his yard, and crepe myrtle is a weird thing. For those of you that don't know or maybe live in the north where it's not very plentiful, this stuff is almost like the ragweed of ornamental trees. Like if you cut this stuff down and you don't remove the stump, you're probably going to get another one in short order. Every year, they cut the plumage off the top of this tree, usually about 3 or 4 foot worth of plumage every single year. And if you don't, this thing will grow like bamboo. It's not the best for woodworking because it really doesn't have much grainage in the inside, even though this one kind of looks like it. Doesn't have a lot of grain, a lot of pattern to it. It's really kind of not interesting. I think it takes paint really well. It does take stain well. I've made a couple of things out of it where they had some growth, like from a side, you know, branch that has come off the side. You know, you can see it here. So when you turn this down, you do get some pattern. If you're able to cut your blank kind of around that branch, you'll get some. So, but this is roadside crap. You know, this is stuff that somebody else had absolutely no use for. In fact, if anything, it was taking up the end of his driveway waiting for, you know, the next recycle day or whatever, when they come by and pick up your yard waste. So I've got some pretty good logs of this, and I can cut this down on a bandsaw. This stuff cuts like butter. And cut this down into usable blanks on a bandsaw and spin it out. It doesn't do anything to the tools. There's no sap in this stuff. So it doesn't do anything about galling up your tools, caking them up with a bunch of sap. I use carbide tools, so it cuts really, really good. And spins out. It polishes or sands easy. It's just really easy stuff. I tell you, if it was more interesting, this would probably be my wood of choice. It's pretty soft, but the workability on it is great. And it just is boring. Once you turn it out, it's really kind of boring. So, doesn't have a real thick bark on it. So when you go to start spinning it, if you haven't cut it apart in a blank that you've taken the bark off of and you start spinning it, a lot of species of wood, when you start spinning them, if they got bark on it, you're taking your life and your eyes and your hands into your, into your own hands. You spin that lathe up with the big heavy bark on a piece like this, you can hurt yourself. And that stuff, you lay a tool to it and it'll wedge in your ceilings and your walls, and you'd really want to be careful because it can spin your tooling out of your hand too. And once that tooling goes flying, watch out, because that'll go through you, like a hot knife through butter on a lathe. So you got to be careful. But this is not that way. It's almost like just a skin. It's not even really a bark. So this I can spin on a lathe and not have to worry about taking the bark off by other means, like a chisel or something first. So anyway, but this is scrap. Cost me a thing. The guy was glad to get rid of it. So take as much or as little of it as you want and use it. So, so that's just one little project. I'll show you here. So here's another. This is a good example of what you don't want to spin on a lathe, the way that it is. So this is bottle brush. And again, you folks in the north probably never seen this unless you come down here. But you may have heard of it. So they call it bottle brush because when this stuff grows, that's exactly what it looks like. It's got these, there's different color varieties, but generally it's red and orange. They have these plumages that hang down off of the ends of the branches. And that plumage that's hanging down looks like a bottle brush, the old metal bottle brush. A little bigger, a little bigger around, but that's kind of what it looks like. So not very creative in their naming. This stuff has a pretty interesting pattern to it. I haven't used a ton of it, but I did make a little coffee scoop, 1 tablespoon scoop out of it just to see what it'd be like. I didn't spend a lot of time on it. It's not intricate. It's not even worth really showing off. But it's kind of got an interesting pattern to it. Almost similar to olive in a way, but more red or auburn color to it, because this is crimson. This was a crimson bottle brush. And I can't remember what the orange one is, but this was red. So I don't know if the orange one is the same color wood or if it just changes the plume on the end of it. But this had a kind of a reddish, not cherry red, but just the tinge of red to it. So this is pretty cool stuff. But as you can see here, this is not what you want to put on your lathe and spin up. So this stuff comes off, and it comes off and makes a mess, but can hurt you. That lathe is spinning. Pretty good RPM. You lay your tool to this and it catches on one of these pieces. It's going to pull, this is a really heavy figured bark that's in this. And you lay your tool to that, and it's probably going to take your tool and put it somewhere where you don't want it. Come close. Come close myself. So I'm going to probably use that for something similar to those handles or maybe another scoop. So let me reach over here real quick. So this will be a little bit of a sneak peek at the next project, or a project, if you will. So I don't have just sprockets laying around everywhere, guys. So this is not to a motorcycle, but I'll show you here in the front. This probably is a garbage timing set, brand new. It's probably garbage to begin with. Couldn't tell you where it's made. There's no tagging on it. Otherwise, other than it does have a .com website on the box. I couldn't tell you if it's good or bad. I couldn't tell you. I'm only saying that it might be garbage because it was 24 bucks. It was 24 bucks on eBay. So pretty inexpensive raw material. And this one here fits a Cavalier, a Cutlass, and a Corsica. I believe the Chevy Beretta might have been in that mix. And it's for the 2.2 liter. So I believe that's a version of maybe the Iron Duke for any of you 4-cylinder car guys out there. I don't remember if that's Iron Duke. That might, oh no, it could be. It could be the Iron Duke, or it could be the next version, the 4-cylinder that had the overhead cam. I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. So this one here is obviously a lot smaller. This whole kit was like 24 bucks, and I don't care how accurate it is. You know, it's not going to time my clock. It's just going to make my clock. So I'm not timing an engine with it, but as you can see, by comparison, this is much smaller. Oh, just got another idea. Look at that. Would you look at that? Almost planned that. Back on track. Scott, don't lose focus here. So anyway, this is another idea. So I wanted to go with the same kind of design. There's plenty of room. Oh, one thing that I didn't tell you about the clock mechanism itself, you can order those with different length center posts. So in this particular case, it's probably pretty thick to get out past these two gears combined. Maybe I can show you. So that's pretty thick. I would probably need over 1 inch center post to make it from the back to the front, unless maybe I recess some of the back of this into the wood. But this was one idea, is to just continue with the big little on top of one another kind of theme. This one is a little bit interesting. Doesn't have any holes for like your hour hands. So that's something I still got to think of and figure out, you know, what's the best way to kind of give some sort of indicators. If I make the wood bigger, then they make these self-adhesive, kind of conical, I don't know how to explain them, colored dots almost. They're kind of self-adhesive. You've probably seen them in the chrome or gold, or sometimes you can order them in colors, and I could plan those out, you know, be pretty easy to map that out and make them uniform for the hour marks around the outside. Probably not a chance in hell that I'd be able to drill this. This is going to be hardened, and it's angled. You can't probably see it here too well, but this is forged at an angle. So, or cast rather. It's not forged, it's cast at an angle. So it'd be a struggle to get a bit to stay in there without wandering around. And again, what am I going to put it on to cut it? You know, hand drill or even a drill press, probably not going to drill through that without, you know, some heat or changing the temperament of the steel around. But this one's kind of interesting because these gears, you can see they're a lot different. And so instead of being your standard motorcycle chain, it kind of takes this chain here. So I'll have to figure out how to wrap it around that. If I go with that same design, how to wrap it around it and then kind of pin it back together. You know, if I do stay with the same design, but this is where, you know, I don't like projects that take a long time and thinking out, designing, putting them together, cutting it. And really, I kind of got to have a little bit more instant gratification. So I don't like the projects that take a long time, you know, that are going to drag on for weeks and weeks. That's why these videos are hard to make in segments. With some of these projects, you know, pens, there's no way I could do 2 videos on one pen. You know, it'd just be impossible. And then the second pen looks, for the purposes of making it, looks exactly the same. The design's a little different, but the purposes of turning it and doing a video on that, it's all the same. So I'm not going to do 100 videos of that. But so this one here, the other thing that I could do is mount them in the orientation that they would be in an engine. So in a 4-cylinder, V8, V6, 4-cylinder, or anything with a camshaft up top, the big ones on the cam and the little ones on the crank. So I could make a piece of wood to go and, you know, mount around this and around the bottom one. Maybe do an hourglass kind of shape in between it to position this down here and then wrap the chain around both of those. That's the way it is in the car. That's, if you were to take the side cover, the timing cover off of a 4-cylinder Corsica, this is the orientation you're going to see them in, and that chain will wrap around the top and the bottom one. So just around the outside of both. So I could do it that way. That would be a little awkward for a desk because now we're starting to separate them out. But if I put this back in the center here, that's small enough, hand-wise, that's small enough. I could make a wooden support for this with, cut at an angle on the back and on the bottom, and this could be a desk clock, kind of interesting. So anyway, just some different clock ideas with the first, the first one that I showed you there is going to come through. This one I just got to wait and kind of play it by ear and see how I want to make it. But, we're not talking a lot of money in the materials on this particular one. Like I said, I just went out to see what I could buy one of those kits for. And $25, and, $5 to $10 on the clock body. And so for $30, you got something that nobody else has. That's the key. Use the imagination. This isn't terribly creative. But use the imagination. It keeps you sharpening up here. Sharpening the saw, as I think they used to say in the prior classes. Got to continue to sharpen the saw. If you're like me and you're in a job that's, it certainly requires a skill set to do that job, but those skills are different, right? So that's a different part of your brain that you're using. This over here allows decompression from that takes up my time currently over there. This decompresses and it gets me thinking about something different. My mind is not occupied on that stuff, which can get, it can be taxing. There's stressors involved in any job, but there's definitely stressors in that one. And, doing something like this, whether it be sewing, whether it be creating a project like this in a wood shop, or just getting your mind thinking about something else, you're going to forget about all that other stress over there by the time that you're doing it. This can be stressful too, because when things don't go your way, trust me, over here on this side and the project side, you're better off when things aren't going your way to step away from it. Walk away from it, put the project down for an hour, a day, whatever it is, to get away from that stress, because you're working with tools over here, guys, and I cannot stress it enough. You're working with tools, even this little hand router. This thing is spinning really, really fast with a really sharp blade hanging out the end of it. Do not give this a lack of respect. As cheesy as this thing is, for looking at it, $100 tool, whatever, with the battery on it, and you got whatever the blade is, whatever, you got a $100 tool right here that will kill you. This will cut you up if you're not careful, and pay it that kind of respect. It's also pretty loud when you're working on it. It's real high pitched, and it's loud when you're cutting through wood, especially oak. Put your hearing protection in there. Your earrings, yeah. Put your hearing protection in there. And don't forget, put your eyeglasses on. I'm not wearing them here today because I'm not working anything right now, but put your eyeglasses on. I cannot stress it enough. Get that schmuck going. If you're working on a lathe or you're working around tools like that are spinning, put that apron, that schmuck on, whatever you want to call it. Don't wear long sleeves. Get those sleeves off. Don't even roll them up. Get them off. Get it down to your bare hands and your arms, and keep everything else away from that, because they will tear you up. There's plenty of videos out there. If you're watching this one, you probably cruise around YouTube. If you are into gore, there's plenty of videos around there to show how things go wrong in a shop. Drill presses are notorious for it. Lathes are notorious for it. Those routers, a little bit more controllable, but they're spinning faster. So trust me, they'll cut you up. Circular saws, hand drills, you drilling through metal in a hand drill with a bit on the end of it, of any size, that thing will wrap you right around that drill. And You know, it can cut you, it can break your wrist, it can break fingers, can do all sorts of nasty stuff. I've got enough scars on my body to prove what happens when you don't give it the proper respect. So safety soapbox there for a minute, guys. But get out there, get your mind active and working on something that allows you to decompress from the other stuff. If you're retired and you don't have that job stressor like the rest of us do, you've already worked and earned that, keep it sharp. The last thing that you need to do in that situation, really in any of our situations, is become sedentary and sit on the couch. It's too easy to get wrapped up into the, and I'm guilty of it, terribly guilty of it. You get wrapped up into the streaming services out there. There's 100 different streaming services out there to take your time away and get you sitting on the couch. I almost think it's the goal for them, is to get you off your feet, sitting on your couch, positioned in front of their media. I can't complain too much because I want you to watch this one, right? So take a little time out of your day, watch this. Maybe you get something a little educational out of it, get some ideas going for yourself. Take editorial license. The stuff I've shown here today is not incredibly intricate. It's not even that creative to me. But maybe you'll see one or two parts and you say, well, I would do that, but I would probably do this different. Sure, tell me about it, because maybe that'll create an idea for me on a future project. Like maybe I could make it a little different this way and it'd be maybe better, maybe not, but different. Anyway, there's no real better or not in these, you know. It's a hand-created project. It is what it is. It comes out the way that it comes out, you know. And that's your mind, that's your talent, that's your, whatever you're seeing for it to be. I don't mind the comments. Some people really get offended. I watched a video the other day by another creator, and I really thought it unfortunate because the way that he chose to do his video. He's a great guy. His projects are outstanding, very down to earth, up in Washington. But he chose to kind of go on this video and blast the trolls out there that are making the comments and posting up some of their comments on his video with their names, kind of, I don't know. It almost became as shady as the person that was the troll to me. You know, like, just don't give people like that any more attention than what they deserve. And if they really were that much better than you at doing what you're doing, then they would make their own project. It's like, feel free, guys. Take my ideas and go twist it around however you want. Use whatever tool you want. Tell me about it. Maybe I'll learn something in the process too. But you know, I don't care. I don't take the comments, the criticisms any sort of way. If you don't like what I do, then you know, that's fine too. It doesn't matter. Stay subscribed. Maybe the next project will be more to your liking. So the key is stay subscribed. But really, guys, this is kind of fun. Pardon, and I'll wrap it up here. But pardon the way that I made it on this one. I'm not going to do a lot of editing, if any. On this one, I don't have the comfort level there. My equipment is lacking a little bit. So this is on an iPhone. GoPro is not working, not being friendly with me. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of editing. But hopefully, maybe this showed you some of the steps along the way in the project. Has been a lot of talking. I'm getting hoarse. I showed you the end of how it kind of turns out, the little spin. A clock with a little spin. You catch that? So maybe how a future one will look. A couple other projects that are bouncing around the shop that I need to work on. But anyway, guys, have fun. Get out there. Create something. You got ideas, you know, send me messages. Taylor Turnings on Instagram. TaylorTurnings.com, TaylorTurnings@gmail.com is the email address. There's plenty of ways to get out there and look at me. TaylorTurnings.com, real quick. So TaylorTurnings.com, that's a website that I launched a little while back. It's got a lot of the pen. I think that's all that I got on there right now is just pens. It's got a link to my Etsy account. So that's where all my pens are posted at. Go out there and take a look at it. If you see something you're interested in, you know, feel free, you know, order it up. Promise that shipping will be reasonably quick for you, and I protect my stuff real well, so you'll If you like something, that's great. If not, just look at it for ideas. The website is continuously in development. We kind of like these videos, all right. It gets developed periodically, but it's under development. I hope to make things a little bit better in navigating it. I hope to have some more content on there, maybe some links to these videos. I'd also eventually wouldn't mind getting the store opened up directly on the website. I haven't done that yet. Baby steps. Eventually, I would like to have some swag available with a logo. I've got some ideas and some resources out there that can help with that. Maybe some hats, some can cozies, some shirts maybe along the way. I'm infant here. We're learning together here, guys, is what I'm trying to tell you. But if you don't go out there and do something, you're never going to learn it. So bottom line is, go out there and do something. Be creative. Get to work on it. Post it up. Send me photos of what project you're working on. It's a community. We're all in it together. We all enjoy doing it. So it's a community. Let me know what you're working on and ideas that you have. Let's share them out there. So thanks a lot, you guys, for watching. I know this was probably long-winded enough. And definitely long-winded enough. I could probably take plenty of time out of the middle of this. But anyway, thanks again for watching, guys. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and the notifications and the thumbs up. Also go over and follow me. I'm on the Instagram at Taylored Turnings. Email, I told you, is tayloredturnings@gmail.com. So that's Taylored Turnings, Taylord Turnings @gmail.com, spelled the same way for Instagram. So appreciate it, guys. Thanks again. Have a great day.